The rain had stopped hours ago, but the pavement outside the garage still shimmered with its memory. A convoy of Bentleys lined the narrow street like a royal procession misplaced in a working-class town. Their polished frames caught every glint of the gray morning light, and their quiet engines purred like caged predators waiting to be unleashed. Travis stood still in the middle of the sidewalk, wiping his blackened hands on a rag that had once been white. He hadn't said a word in minutes. Not since the first car pulled up. Not since she stepped out. She was nothing like the frail woman he had helped 2 days ago. Gone was the loose shawl and trembling posture. In her place stood a woman carved from legacy and control, draped in ivory silk and pearls that could fund a dozen small towns. Her heels clicked on the concrete like punctuation marks to a silent sentence only she understood. She looked at him, not with the gratitude he had expected, but with something heavier, responsibility, maybe. Or regret. "Travis Coburn," she said. Her voice was quiet, yet it cut through the murmurs of the small crowd that had started to gather. "Get in. We have work to do." He blinked, still gripping the rag. "Ma'am, You helped me when no one else would," she said. "Now let me help you the way only I can." Inside the lead Bentley, the leather seats felt unreal beneath his calloused hands. The smell was too clean. Too foreign. As the convoy pulled away, Travis glanced back at the garage. It was still shuttered. The rusted sign still swung slightly in the breeze. That chapter was closed. He just hadn't realized it until now. The drive was long, silent, and strangely peaceful. When they stopped in front of a gated property framed by towering trees and a wrought iron fence, Travis couldn't help but ask, "What is this place?" "Your future," she said simply. Then she stepped out. The mansion before them wasn't just big. It was monumental. Like someone had tried to build a cathedral and then decided to make it livable. She led him inside without another word. The floors were marble. The art was real. Every step echoed. Every breath felt watched. In a room lined with books and bathed in amber light, she turned to him. "You changed my life with a battery and a smile. And I nearly let you walk away unnoticed. That was my first mistake." Travis swallowed, unsure of where to put his hands, unsure if this was a dream or a setup or something else entirely. "I was testing the people in that town," she said. "I wanted to see if kindness still existed where wealth had not reached. You were the only one who stopped. You didn't know who I was. You didn't ask for anything. You simply saw someone in need." She pulled a folder from a drawer and handed it to him. Inside were blueprints. Schematics. Designs. All based on the modifications he had made to her scooter. "My company, Carrington Mobility, was looking for its next innovation. What you built, with nothing but scrap parts and instinct, is better than what my engineers have created in years." "I didn't build it to impress anyone," Travis muttered. "Exactly," she said, her smile faint. "And that's what makes you valuable." He stared at the folder, then back at her. "What do you want from me?" "To come with me. To lead the team that will mass-produce this. To be the heart behind our next chapter." "I'm just a mechanic," he whispered. "You're the kind of man empires are built around," she replied. Travis lowered his gaze. He thought of the garage, of Derek, of the way the doors had closed on him without a second thought. Then he thought of the woman in front of him, of her quiet eyes and the way she had transformed in a single day from stranger to catalyst. "I don't know how to run a company," he said. "Then I'll teach you. Or better yet, you'll teach them. You know more about integrity than any executive I've met." He looked around again. The wealth was overwhelming, but it wasn't what pulled him in. It was her belief. Her certainty. And the way she said, "we," instead of "I." Outside, the convoy waited. Travis nodded slowly. "All right," he said. "Let's get to work." And just like that, The story that had begun with a broken scooter on a Tuesday morning was about to change the world. The sun had barely risen over the sleepy town of Weybridge when Nathan Hale opened the garage like he always did, with a quiet sigh and a shoulder that had long forgotten what it meant to be painless. The coffee he brewed in the corner bubbled away with familiar warmth, scenting the dusty air with something that tried to feel like comfort. It was another Tuesday. Another day to fix what other people gave up on. Tires too worn, engines too tired, and lives too hurried to notice the man who spent his days buried beneath their mistakes. Nathan didn't complain. Not out loud. The silence was his companion. It echoed off the walls when he hummed an old tune from his father's generation or when he spoke softly to the machines like they could understand patience and effort better than people did. At 36, Nathan had never left town. Some men talked about dreams with fire in their voices. Nathan just breathed. He had taken over the garage after his father's stroke, and then his father died a year later, not in a hospital, but right there, on the oil-stained floor, trying to adjust a carburetor. Since then, the garage had been both tomb and altar. He lived above it. Ate beside it. Slept next to its heat. And loved, well, that word didn't visit often. Until the summer she appeared. She wasn't from Weybridge. That was obvious from the second her car, a battered blue hatchback that had clearly seen better decades, rolled into the driveway, coughing smoke like it had secrets. She stepped out cautiously, eyes darting behind oversized sunglasses, clutching her handbag like it held more than just belongings. Nathan had been under a truck that morning, tightening a rusted bolt with a stubbornness that matched his own. But he noticed her. The way a quiet man does. From the corner of his eye. From the pause between one breath and the next. "Excuse me," she called, her voice unsure. Do you fix transmissions?" He slid out from under the truck, wiping grease from his hands with a cloth that had known too many battles. "Sometimes," he said. "Depends who's asking." She gave a half smile, tight at the corners. "My name's Elise. Elise Morgan. My car barely made it here. It's complicated." So was she. And something in Nathan already knew it. He worked on her car for 4 days. It should have taken one. But every time he pulled a piece apart, there was something else wrong. A wire frayed. A belt too loose. But maybe, if he was honest, he wanted an excuse. An extra day. Another chance to hear her talk about the cities she'd passed through. About how she was between things, places, jobs, people. Her life sounded like music that had skipped too many beats, but still tried to play. They didn't talk much. But what they didn't say filled the garage like smoke. She watched him sometimes, leaning against the wall, her sunglasses always nearby, but rarely on. And once, just once, she laughed. Full and unexpected. At a joke he barely made. And Nathan had stood there, stunned. Like the sound had shaken something loose in his ribcage. On the last day, when the car was finally fixed, she lingered. "I should go," she said, softly. "But I hate goodbyes." He offered a shrug. "Then don't say it." She hesitated. Then leaned over the counter and scribbled something on a scrap of receipt paper. Her number. Her name. A place? No. A single sentence: "If you ever drive east, find the bakery on 5th and Clementine. Ask for L. I'll be waiting." She didn't say another word. Just turned. Got into the car. And was gone. Nathan kept that paper. Tucked it into the back of his wallet. For years, he didn't call. Didn't drive east. Life stayed the same. Until one spring, a man in a black coat came by, asking if this was Hale's Auto. The way he said it, like he was reading the name off a tombstone. Nathan fixed his car like always. But he couldn't shake the feeling that a chapter was turning without him. Then came the letter. No return address. Just his name, in handwriting that made his breath catch. Inside, a photo. A child. 4, maybe 5. Curly hair. Holding a wrench bigger than his head. Smiling. And behind him, on the wall, a framed picture. Of the garage. Of Nathan's father. He turned the photo over. 4 words. He looks like you. That night, Nathan didn't sleep. He walked the empty garage. Touched the carburetor his father last held. Stared at the paper with a storm behind his eyes. For the first time in his life, he was afraid. Afraid that he had become part of someone else's story and never knew it. Afraid that maybe, he had missed the only thing that mattered. The next morning, the town was quiet. Until the Bentleys came. He didn't see it coming. Not the echo of her voice. Not the way her silhouette emerged from behind the car like a memory that had never truly faded. For a moment, time bent around him, twisted into knots of disbelief, and the sound of 1,000 wrench drops rang in his chest. Evelyn. Travis whispered under his breath, though the woman standing before him was nothing like the frail figure he once guided into his shop. She stood tall now. A tailored suit hugged her frame with the confidence of power, her hair swept back in a pristine chignon, and her eyes were steel. "You remember," she said softly, her lips barely moving. "I wasn't sure if you would." He nodded, unable to form a coherent sentence. Around them, the growl of the Bentley convoy still echoed in the alley like an orchestra holding its breath. The townsfolk who had gathered began to realize that this wasn't a political visit. This wasn't about money. This was personal. 6 days ago, Travis had fixed her scooter without knowing her name. 6 years ago, Evelyn Carrington had disappeared from public view after the mysterious collapse of her family's empire. The press had guessed everything from financial scandal to terminal illness. But none of them guessed the truth. She had chosen to vanish, to watch the world from behind tinted glass, seeking someone who could remind her what it meant to be human. And somehow, that someone was him. "Why are you here?" he finally asked, his voice a blend of wonder and fear. "Because I owe you more than gratitude," she said, stepping closer. "I owe you the truth." Before he could speak again, she turned to the nearest Bentley and nodded. The driver opened the door. A young girl stepped out, no more than 7, her eyes wide, clutching something in her hand. Travis blinked, his heart stuttering. The girl walked forward slowly and held out a worn-out toy wrench, one of the giveaway items he used to hand to kids whose parents couldn't afford repairs. "I kept this," she said. "My mom said it belonged to someone who fixed more than just machines." The world tilted beneath him. He looked from the girl to Evelyn, but she was already watching his reaction, her face unreadable. "She's not yours," Evelyn said, cutting through the silence. "But she carries your kindness. That's why she's here." The girl stepped back as Evelyn continued. "You didn't ask who I was that day. You didn't care. And that's what changed everything. You see, everyone else wanted something. Even when I had nothing." Travis's throat tightened. He felt like a kid again, standing before his grandfather's casket, trying not to cry because men weren't supposed to. But this time, it wasn't grief. It was something deeper, a realization that some moments choose us long before we understand their weight. The door of the second Bentley opened. Another man emerged. An older gentleman with sharp features and a cane carved from ebony wood. He surveyed Travis slowly, then gave a nod of approval. "This is the man?" he asked Evelyn. "Yes," she replied. The man extended his hand. "Martin Devane, head of Carrington Legacy Trust." Travis shook it instinctively. "We're starting over," Martin said. "And you, son, are going to help us lead it." Travis laughed. A bitter, confused laugh that cracked in the middle. "I'm just a mechanic. You've got the wrong guy." But Evelyn stepped closer, so close he could see the faint scar above her eyebrow, the one she got when she'd fallen on the garage floor, though she'd pretended it was nothing. She didn't wear makeup now to hide it. "You're exactly the right guy," she said. "Because you still believe broken things deserve to be fixed. That includes people." And then, for the first time in days, Travis said nothing. Not because he didn't have questions, but because, deep down, something inside him already knew. This moment had been waiting, quietly, faithfully, behind every choice he made to help someone who couldn't pay. Every time he stayed late to fix a stranger's engine. Every time he remembered what his grandfather taught him, that dignity didn't come from titles, but from hands covered in grease and hearts that refused to stop caring. The third Bentley opened, and this time it wasn't a person who stepped out, it was a prototype. A matte black electric vehicle with gold trim and wheels that seemed carved from the future. Travis blinked. It looked familiar. "It's based on your design," Evelyn said, watching his reaction. "We copied the modifications you made to my scooter." The engineers said they'd never seen a more efficient fix on such an outdated model. "You stole my work?" he asked, half joking. "I borrowed your brilliance," she said. "And now I want you to lead the next generation of Carrington Mobility. Officially." He shook his head. "I don't have a degree. I barely graduated high school." "You have something rarer than all that," she said. "You have heart. And that's what the world's been starving for." Just then, a soft vibration buzzed in his pocket. Travis pulled out his phone. A message from Derek, his old manager. "You see the news yet? You're all over it. CNN. Forbes. They're calling you the mechanic messiah." "I was wrong." He stared at the screen, then looked back at Evelyn. "You planned this." "I didn't plan for you to save me," she said. "But I planned to never forget it." Silence hung for a long moment. Then Travis nodded. "If I say yes, what happens to the shop?" She smiled. "We'll keep it. As a monument. As a school. As a symbol. Call it whatever you want. But it stays." And for the first time since his grandfather's funeral, Travis felt peace. Not comfort. Not success. Peace. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's go change the world." As they walked toward the convoy, the girl ran ahead, her toy wrench raised like a baton leading a parade. Travis followed, with Evelyn beside him. Somewhere behind them, the crowd was still frozen. The old garage stood tall, its rusty sign creaking in the wind, no longer forgotten. And the future, that impossible, terrifying, beautiful future, waited just beyond the open car door. The sky over Elmsworth turned pale gold as the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the lot where the old garage once stood, now transformed into the first prototype facility of Carrington Mobility. The familiar clang of tools had returned, but now, it was harmonized by the soft buzz of machines testing electric motors and the laughter of new apprentices. In the heart of it stood Travis, not in a suit, not in a tie, but in the same dark shirt he'd worn when he first helped Evelyn. He'd refused the wardrobe upgrade, insisting on staying grounded in the life he came from. He looked around the place, not with disbelief anymore, but with reverence. His hands rested on a table covered in blueprints, coffee stains, and sketches with smudged pencil marks. But it wasn't the vehicles that moved him now. It was the people. Kids who'd once hung around his garage looking for someone to believe in them were now wearing clean coveralls, learning real skills, talking about torque, circuits, and battery ratios like pros. Evelyn entered the room silently, a folder in hand, but her presence was unmistakable, composed and commanding, yet softer now. She watched him for a long moment before speaking. "You built more than a vehicle here, Travis. You built trust," she said, placing the folder gently on the desk. He glanced at it. A contract extension. Partnership rights. Full creative control. I already said yes, he said, glancing sideways at her with a small grin. She smiled back. This isn't for the deal. It's for the legacy. Travis opened the folder. Inside was a photograph, faded but carefully preserved. It was a snapshot of him and his grandfather, taken outside the same garage when it first opened under the name Coburn and Son Automotive. His hand paused over the image. He'd be proud, Evelyn said. Travis nodded, voice caught in his throat. He taught me never to walk past someone who's stuck. He said the moment you ignore someone's breakdown, you stop being human. Evelyn lowered her gaze. You reminded me of that the day I broke down. Not just my scooter. Everything. The room fell quiet. The hum of the machines in the background, the rustle of wind through the half-open door, it all seemed to stop. Then she spoke again, voice barely audible. There's something I haven't told you. Travis looked up. The scooter wasn't broken by chance. I sabotaged it. The words hit like a wrench dropped on concrete. She took a step forward. I needed to see if anyone out there still helped without a reason. Without cameras. Without knowing who I was. That day was a test, for me. And for the world I thought I'd lost faith in. Travis didn't speak. He wasn't sure whether to be angry, confused, or just tired. I didn't expect you to fail, she continued. But I never imagined you'd rebuild everything I lost. Including myself. A long silence passed before he finally responded. You found what you were looking for. But what if I hadn't passed your test? What would have happened then? She hesitated, then answered, then I would have kept looking, and maybe never found home again. There it was. The word, home. A word Travis hadn't let himself say aloud since the day he was fired. Since the day he thought he'd lost everything. You're not just rebuilding scooters anymore, she said, gesturing to the room. You're rebuilding people. He looked at her, and something in his chest nodded. You think this can really last? He asked. A company built on kindness? She laughed, not mockingly, but with a soft defiance. Kindness isn't weakness, Travis. It's a competitive advantage. It's what the world forgot, and now it's craving it more than ever. At that moment, the door burst open and the young girl, the one who had handed him the toy wrench days ago, ran in, her laughter trailing behind her like a kite. She was followed by a group of kids, all part of the community outreach program Evelyn had funded with Travis's help. They gathered around, their hands still greasy from training. Mr. Travis, one of them yelled. We finished the engine simulation. He ruffled the boy's hair and smiled. Show me what you've got. They all gathered around the monitor where a virtual engine turned smoothly, firing without error. The room erupted in cheers. Travis turned to Evelyn. This is what I want to build. Not just vehicles, not just mobility. But chances. Evelyn nodded. Then let's build the kind of empire that starts in a garage, but ends in the heart. As the kids returned to work, Travis and Evelyn stepped outside. The convoy of Bentleys that had once shocked the town now waited quietly, no longer symbols of power, but of promise. Behind them, people waved, not because they were impressed by money, but because they were proud of what had grown from grit and grease. Before they left, Travis paused and looked back at the building. The new sign read, The Coburn Legacy, Powered by Heart. Beneath it, etched in metal, were 5 words Evelyn had chosen herself. Fix what others left behind. He turned to Evelyn, then to the girl beside her. You ready? He asked. The girl grinned. Only if I get to drive someday. Travis chuckled. Deal. And with that, they entered the lead Bentley. The engine hummed to life, not with noise, but with purpose. As they pulled away, the sunset followed them, casting long shadows that no longer seemed heavy. Somewhere in the silence of the back seat, Evelyn reached into her coat and pulled out something small. She handed it to Travis. It was his grandfather's dog tag. The one he thought he'd lost years ago. "Found it inside the toolbox you gave me," she whispered. "I kept it. Just, in case you ever needed reminding of who you are." Travis stared at it, the metal cool in his palm, the letters worn but legible. And for the first time in a long, long while, he didn't feel lost anymore.